You are now listening to the Collecting Weekly podcast.
Hey guys, my name is Zach.
And I'm Victoria.
Welcome to this week's bonus episode of Collecting Weekly. Doing a mic check here, and we are going to talk about toys for a little bit. This will definitely be a shorter episode than we normally record, but thank you for joining me today. I think it's the first time in a long time that you've been on the podcast.
So I guess give an introduction for the new listeners that you have.
Sure. We actually recorded a podcast once a long time ago, and I remember we recorded it, but the audio was so bad that we couldn't use it. But Victoria is my loving wife. We've been dating for 6 years. We've been married for 3.5. And I just wanted to do a little interview with you, and we can see how you feel about collecting, being the spouse of an collector. So first and foremost, obviously I didn't collect when we first started dating. It was like roughly about halfway between, the beginning of our dating and now where I started.
Well, I mean, I guess in the traditional way of collecting, like 1/6 figures, no. But you had other things. So, like, I remember it was, like, cards, like, playing cards, and then it was...
Yeah, it was Magic the Gathering, and then, some other stuff.
And then it was working on doing the kits for...
Warhammer 40K.
Warhammer, yeah. So, I mean, you weren't collecting
toys.
These types of toys, but
I had
there
hobbies.
were... Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
But I know for us... I won't really go into how we started getting collecting, because that's a kind of a boring story, but for 6 scale... I remember probably 2 years ago for my birthday, I remember you asked me what I wanted. And at that time, we used to go to the Alamo Drafthouse, which is a movie theater in San Antonio. And we would, check out the comic book store that was located at the movie theater. And I remember I was between 2 figures when I decided I wanted a figure for my birthday. Do you remember what those were?
Was it one that I bought?
Yes, it was one you bought.
Well, I recall then. So being the Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do you remember the second one? So the second one was the Kylo Ren from The Force Awakens. Okay. Now at that time, Kylo Ren wasn't out yet. The Vader was the Sideshow Deluxe Vader, which had been out for a while. And I remember at this store they have like a freestanding display, and you can kind of walk around it. And I remember seeing that Vader and just being blown away, like. How could something look so good that that's that small? And we got it, and then we started buying a few figures, and then we sold the Vader to get the Hot Toys Vader, and it was definitely a ride to begin with. Being the spouse of a collector, obviously, since I started collecting, I had a display. I started with the Detolf, and now I'm moved on to a. It's a China cabinet, but it's just a really big display case. How has that been for you?
Well, you're right. It has been a journey, an adventure, seeing that growth. I guess it's been interesting, like seeing you go through waves, and like I can tell like when you're on to like a new thing, or like when you're on like
for example, like the Iron Man binge.
Yes.
And back to Star Wars.
And then it was like Blade Runner, and then there was like some movies here and there. You've had some like Marvel stuff in there.
Yeah.
Back to Star Wars all the way. Random things that you had like from Fallout. Right?
Yeah,
you made like
the
one
custom,
of the
NCR Ranger.
Yeah, and so like I've seen all of those things. I guess now we're to the point where your collection it's more stable as far as what you have displayed, not necessarily what you actually are collecting.
Yeah, sometimes I'll buy a figure and it just won't be a hit for me, and I'll sell it. But like generally speaking, the figures that are the hits for me, like I'm not flipping entire collections.
Yeah.
So for you, obviously you have friends that don't collect and that they come to our house, or being I guess now it's not as prevalent because my collection is in its own space, and I know that when we moved, we've just recently got a house, and when we got the house, one of the arrangements was that every toy needs to be in the office, but when we used to live in the apartment where we had all the toys, I wouldn't say they were all over the place, but they took up a good part of the living room, which was we had a 1 bedroom and then a living room. How was that like when you had new people that came to the house that didn't know? was it ever like a conversation that you had to have, or were they like impressed with it? Like, I know times that you've had girlfriends come over and, I wasn't there, but how did that go? Like, was it embarrassing? Was it, is it a tough sell that like, oh, my husband buys quote unquote toys?
Well, I mean, usually I guess you can say a conversation starter. Like it's usually more of a curiosity, not like saying like, oh, okay, well, blow it off. But they'll usually ask like, oh, what's this for? Like, who, what's this about? How long have you been doing that? Usually the next question is, how much are they? Mm-hmm. That's usually the big one. And so I kind of start talking about the cost. They're like, oh my God, how do you let him do this? That's usually kind of how that conversation goes.
Yeah.
Like, how could you? Like, why do you let this happen? And, I know we've kind of talked about it as far as, spending goes. And we have a smallish system going where, like, not buying too much stuff. Or, like, if you're buying something, it's because you sold something.
Yeah.
So kind of make it work a little bit. But that's usually kind of how that happened. It wasn't usually... an embarrassment thing. I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's in the living room. Like, I can't, like, hide it.
Yeah.
But as far as being, like, in the house now, I do enjoy having everything inside the office.
Yeah, and I think that now that we have a daughter, because when I first started collecting, we didn't have a kid. Now we do. In a way, I actually really like it, because obviously, like, the Hot Toys and the Sideshow and the expensive stuff she doesn't mess with, but, I'll get into smaller lines like the Pokemon figures, and she'll come into the office and she'll grab one and, take it around the house, and, or like the Millennium Falcon, she'll mess with it. And, I mean, I think it's pretty cool, like, to introduce, our kid to these things. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean,
there's things that she can't touch. Like, there's things that would be really dangerous if she was unmonitored. But, like the more vinyl statue type Pokemon figures, like the ones that she really can't hurt herself with. I mean, do you think it's neat that she's starting to get into these things that we used to get into when we were kids?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say the same type of toys that I had as a child, but I mean, she does have a bunch of toys. I like seeing her like toys that aren't just like typical girl toys. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So like, I'm glad that she does it. It's not just like stuffed animals and Barbies. Like, she likes that plus dragons and dinosaurs. Yeah. And cheetahs and lions and stuff like that. Like, she likes a little bit of everything, and that I do like.
Yeah.
For sure.
So as far as I've been collecting, I know that you might not have like a big opinion of the figures that I collect in terms of like, if I get something and I really love it, maybe you'll just think it's neat. But for you, is there a figure that I've gotten that you were like, dang, that's like a really cool figure? Like, just in terms of, like, maybe the accessories or the outfit or the way that it was executed by the company. Is there anything that you can think of that was, like, just really amazing?
Well, I might be biased. And, like, my one, which you probably already know which one I'm going to say.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it was Be the Jack Sparrow.
Okay, so the DX-15 Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, and the reason, because, like, one, as far as, like, the outfit itself, like, it was, like, pretty spot on to the movie. Like, there's a lot of like details and things that I didn't really realize.
Yeah, that's once we went back and looked.
And then just all the attachment little pieces and like little, like he had like the little skull of the mom and like all these like little things that you can actually add on to the figure. And then of course like how you can pose it, do the eyes,
and
like
the display base was really cool.
The base, I mean it had like it just there's a lot of stuff. The wanted posters, like it had a lot of stuff, and I thought that was kind of neat. I know that you have a lot of, obviously a lot of other stuff, but I don't sit with you, I guess, when you do the unboxing, so I don't always see all the little pieces and things. That one, I sat with you, like, when we actually opened it.
Yeah, I remember I made a point to wait until you got off of work.
Yeah, so I mean, and for everyone listening, so Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favorite movies, I guess series of movies. So I thought that was pretty neat, a neat figure.
Yeah, and that one is no longer with us. Once we got into the office, so the way my office is set up, I have a desk, and then we have the collection, and my wife has a desk. She's an artist, so she has an art desk. But it just didn't really work with like the whole idea that the desk tilts and, having this figure on your desk, and, it didn't really fit on my desk because it's a huge, that base is massive. And so we sold it to fund some other stuff that we needed at the time. That's definitely one that one day, if things line up and we find a good deal, I think I'd like to repurchase it because it is such an important figure to a collection, and we're going to start adding a few more shelves to the office to put, these figures. So my collection right now is Star Wars, but there's also some movie character figures that I really enjoy. V for Vendetta, Russell Crowe Gladiator. I want to start expanding a small line. I have a 2049 K from Blade Runner that I paid off a long time ago. We're still waiting for it to come in. The manufacturer's running a little late, but I do want to have a shelf with all this neat figures from other lines. On the opposite note, what is the worst figure that you think I've ever gotten? Maybe it was something that was just stupid expensive for not a lot of figure, or just didn't really pan out. I have my own idea of what you're gonna say, but I'm curious to see if you have anything in mind, or if you will pick the one that I'm gonna pick.
Well, it's not one particular one. It's like a series, like a few of them.
Uh-huh.
So it was mainly when you were on the Iron Man binge, and those were really expensive. And I remember them being like this big deal because they were like die cast, right?
Uh-huh.
And it was just like a lot of stuff. And they're like, posing them, this happening, and like the paint chipping, and like all these things. I feel like it's like so dramatic. Like always something happening to them.
Yeah, I remember when I got the first one, it had that scratch, and Sideshow was being very difficult, and it basically had a scratch on the faceplate, and to get it replaced was just so stressful, and it was such a pain in the ass, and it was like 3 weeks that I had to deal with it, and finally after a long time they bulged. I thought you were gonna say the Django. I remember when I got that one, you were so unimpressed by that one. And I got roasted by so many people.
So
I know it's kind of a running joke. We've mentioned it on the podcast several times. Funny. But that one was bad.
Well, I mean, that one was bad. I mean, I guess I was thinking more of like actual figures that you...
I guess you're not kit bash.
Yeah, not kit bash, or not like things that you custom. Not. I wasn't considering those. That was pretty funny though. Like the clothing was fine, and the accessories were fine. It was just that face sculpt was so bad. Like the color was bad, the sculpt was bad. Like it was just bad.
Yeah, because you have this thing when companies try to make African. I guess I wouldn't say really African American because he's Django and he's a slave, but like a dark complected skin tone where you think that sometimes they can look a little ashy, and as opposed to being dark toned.
Exactly, and so you mentioned a little bit earlier, like being an artist, and myself, of course, being that same color.
Yeah. My wife is African American.
Yeah. So that being a part of it, but whenever I would do like self portraits or painting, or like even in school, like mixing color. Like you learn a lot of different things about skin tones, that they're not just like the color brown out of the tube and white to make it lighter. Like that's not how that works.
I've tried to paint African American skin tone without talking to you, and it's a nightmare. I still can't get it right. It does not look right.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of different colors that actually go into it. It's not just like that flat, like that basic. And so that was a part of it. But that whole sculpt was horrible. But back to the Iron Man, it was just. For me, one of the, I guess, worst things is because you went back and forth so many times, and you bought them, sold them, bought them again, sold them again. Like, it was just like a waste of time. Like, at the end, you still don't have any.
I want one. I want the Mark 50.
Okay, but how many have you bought and sold and traded and
7.
bought? Okay, 7. So, yeah, so.
But to be fair, one of them was the same one twice. And I should have held on to the Civil War one, because like a month after I sold it, it went from being like a figure that you couldn't get rid of for $180 to being like a $500 figure, like in the span of a month. And I was like, shit, I should have kept that one. Is there an experience that you've had with me, or that we've had together, or that you've observed that was very rewarding for you as like the spouse of a collector? Maybe, because you taught me how to paint, and obviously that's a big part of the channel. Is there like a sculpt that I've painted that I did really well on, or a base that I've done, or just a kit bash that I put together? Can you think of anything that, or even just an experience, like a figure that I got that I was looking for a while?
Well, I remember this one, and it was kind of funny. It wasn't anything super important that you're like collecting or like looking for, like by any means. I remember I was getting off work, and you asked me to no I wasn't getting off work, I was just doing errands, and then you asked me to check a Ross for you for
so this isn't Hot Toys related.
Yeah. It's not like that kind of, it's not that kind of like figure work, but yeah. So you asked me to check Ross. It was for a Anakin like
Black Series,
like figure. And I was like, okay. Like I remember you sent me a picture of it. Like, okay, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like,
so a little bit of backstory. That morning, someone had found 12 of them at a Ross, and at this point, this was I think it was like 2016 summer. Maybe it wasn't 17. It was 16, and this figure had been sold out for a long time, and it was about $100 figure. It had been sold out for a very, very, very long time. And someone found, like I said, like 12 of them at Ross, and no one believed him. And so he went back, and I think he bought one. He went back and took a picture and posted his receipt. And all of a sudden, everyone in this group, it was a Black Series collectors group, started checking their Rosses, and more people were chiming in. Oh my God, there was orange box Chewies, Anakins, Sand Troopers, like all bunch of random things. And I told you, I was like, hey, it's a long shot. Like, it's, this news broke at 10. This is like 6 o'clock. Can you check for me? And you did. And what happened?
And miraculously, like, I just, walked over to the toy section, casually, as one does in Ross, looking at everything on the way. And they had three.
Yeah.
Three there. And I was like, oh, okay. And so... And they actually were all pretty decent condition, like nothing.
Yeah,
like
they
crazy.
were really
like, boxes
minty
were fine.
boxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were $9.99 each,
Yeah.
and you bought all three. And I kept one. I sold two. And at this point, so I scalped them. I gave a fairly good deal though to a local collector for two of them. But it was like a big experience. It was a figure that I wanted at that time, and we made a little cash on it too, which wasn't bad at all. But yeah, that was really cool for me personally. Probably my favorite moment collecting. Tashi Station Facebook group, which we always mention, they were doing a giveaway, and they do giveaways like 6 to 10 times a year, depending on some backdoor stuff that I don't know about. But they get figures, they give them away, and they're Hot Toys figures or Sideshow figures. And the day our daughter was born was the day of a drawing that they were doing, and it was for a 6-scale Jedi Patrol Stormtrooper from Rogue One. And I remember the day before, they post the entries so you can see how many you have, and also the source of how you got to that many entries. And I remember looking at it like, damn, like I have a lot of entries. This is like the best chance that I've ever had to win anything. And the next day you went into labor really early. It was like almost 3.5 weeks early. And so I had totally forgotten, with everything that was going on that day, because you went into labor at 4:35. I had to call my work and call out, and then get you to the hospital. The triage and the delivery, and then just all the people coming to visit, and it was a lot. And I remember it was right, like maybe 10 minutes after, because you gave birth at about 1:30, and it was. Oh, what were you going to say?
I was like 1:55.
Oh, 1:55, shout out. So you gave birth on 1:55 on March 16th, 2017. And I remember it took them almost until 8 o'clock at night to get us to a room, like to an actual room, because we were there in the delivery room with like the blood everywhere and like
for a while.
It was like, obviously they took the baby away, gave her a shower or a bath or whatever, and then, checked her and everything. But I remember like my phone just blowing up, like everyone was tagging me. I was like, what the hell is going on? And I checked and I'd won, and like that was so crazy. And Sideshow shipped the figure really quick, and I remember the day it came in, I actually didn't get to open it that day because our daughter was born and she had a very small case of jaundice, and so we had to take her to like 2 different hospitals to get different blood tests done because of our insurance. It was just really complicated. And I remember there was a point where we had left the first hospital and we were passing by our apartment, and the GPS said we would make it to the next hospital and their lab station, non-emergency lab station. Obviously we could have gone to the emergency room, but it would have been really expensive. Closed at a certain time. I think it was like 6:30. And we could have either gone to the apartment and got the package and maybe missed the second hospital window. And I was like, well, this is being a dad. We have to go and get the test done. And so I didn't get it, I think, until like 2 days later, because the next day I went out of town for work again. And then, by the time I leave, they're not open yet. When I get back, they're closed, the office. But to me, that was really rewarding. And I always say that figure is her figure. Like whenever she gets old enough, if she wants to put it in a room, or, if she ever wants to whatever, like that's her figure. And to me, that was really rewarding because the occasion is, so significant, and we won that on her actual birthday. It was just really cool. But thank you for sitting down with me. We're doing a mic check, and I wanted to just bang out a quick podcast and see how it sounded. We got a new microphone. It's a Yeti. I don't know. It's a Yeti, blue Yeti microphone. Great deal on Amazon. So hopefully the quality sounds good. The podcast is really picking up. So Sydney and I will be back Tuesday for our normal show. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. My ODST video is premiering in 53 minutes. I'm crazy nervous. I really hope that people tune in to watch it because I worked really hard on the video. And there's some small issues that I noticed after the upload. But since it's a premiere video, there's a splash page that I can't change. But you've seen me pacing all day waiting for this video to drop. But yeah, guys, like I said, we'll be back Tuesday for our regular hour-long show. Thanks for listening.